just record that because a couple of people in the States wanted us to record it because of the time difference. We've got 25 people registered, everybody, and we've got about 9 people, 8 or 9 people here at the moment. So we'll just give them another 2 minutes and then we'll make a start. Here we go. And Reagan. Oh. Reagan, how are you, mate?
Yeah, g'day, Paul. How are you?
Good, mate. Reagan, you're from Archer. You fly at Archerfield, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Lots of Brizzy people. Reagan, we got Tony from the UK and Taffy and Stan from South Australia. Greg's from Caboolture. Div is he flies at Sunny Coast and Caboolture. Phil flies at Caboolture. John flies at Caboolture, and Paul is down in New South Wales near Toronto and near Lake Macquarie. So we've got 25 people registered. So as they come in, we might sort of make a start. Just a bit of housekeeping. If everybody can keep their things on mute and maybe turn your videos off so that we can all save bandwidth. It is interactive. There'll be a couple of polls and some put your hands up thing. Does everybody know where the raise the hand thing is? It's in the middle of this screen at the bottom. And also there'll be a text question as get you to make a comment on some things. Peter's joined us. And there you go, Tony. Good on you, mate. And the old Homer Simpson hand. So we might make a start and admit people as we go. To everybody who's just joined us, just put your mics on mute and maybe the camera's off just to save bandwidth, and we'll make a start. So thank you all for registering, and those who haven't filled in the Survey Monkey, if you could do that as well. There's a link there. It's just a short 8-question thing just to get some stats on who's around and all that sort of stuff. This is my first time driving one of these things by myself, so please bear with me. Please don't hesitate to, if you put your hand up and I don't see it or whatever, just put your mic on and we'll make a start. So I've got to get these things in the right location so that they open. We did do a dry run on this today, so Greg's going to be shaking his head if I don't do it right. And it's still doing it. Put that over there. The stall. All right. I'm going to open up. So everybody should see a really nice picture of an aerofoil in a wind tunnel. So I'm really excited. We just got we've acquired a wind tunnel. Needs a bit of work, but really excited about it. It's on the list of things, the copious amounts of things that we have to do. If anybody can't see the stall, the wing aerofoil section on the screen, just let me know by audio. That'll be good. And as people arrive, I'll just let them into the room. All right, we'll make a start. So just a little bit about myself. I am a LAME, a licensed aircraft maintenance engineer for you, Tony. And I did 16 years in the Air Force. I've worked in Canada, worked in PNG, worked in the Middle East. Got a company called Flight Safety Solutions where we've got a fully compliant aircraft record system that's CASAR 43 ready. CASAR 43, that's a whole nother presentation. And we provide aircraft owner support, stands on board, and a couple of other people. From a flight training perspective, grade 1 flight instructor for GA and an RAOS flight instructor. I used to be the CFI, but my wife's taken over for that now. And I just got a phone call from somebody who's supposed to log in. Hello, Didi, you can't log on? Just click on that link and it'll just ask you to join in. No, the other one. On your original email from Try Booking, it'll have a link. Okay. I'll just email it to you. Sorry, everybody. I'll just get Dita sorted out here. Dita, I'll email it to you. You'll have it in 2 seconds, mate. Yeah, bye. Sorry, everybody. So, yeah, got a bit of flight training experience and around the place. So, what is a stall? Everybody can still see that screen. If anybody's got a problem, just let me know. So, what is a stall? When I do flight reviews and pilot training for people who have flown at other locations, these are the two most popular ones that I get. So wings are no longer producing lift, and when the airspeed drops below VS, they're the two most popular ones. So we're going to run a poll here, and I'm going to give you you should see a thing pop up now. I'll get everybody to please have a read of the thing that's popped up and choose your best answer. And if anybody hasn't seen the poll thing pop up, just let me know. Okay, some votes coming in now. And we'll just leave that up for a little bit longer. Everybody had a go. Anybody still outstanding? I've got 5 total votes, so there's still a couple of people who haven't done it yet. Taffy. Taffy, you got it under control, mate? I've only got 5 votes on that. Okay. Taffy, you're all good, mate? You still got your mic on?
Hello. Wow, I was trying to connect to the headset, right? The pop-up came, but it disappeared before I could click on it.
Oh, okay. All right. Anybody else have problems with that at all?
Hey, Paul,
Yes, Paul.
if you go down to your bottom,
Okay.
everybody, if you go down to the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little triangle and a square and a circle. Click, that's activities. Click on that. You should find the poll in there.
Thanks, Greg.
No worries.
Good on you, Greg. And Paul, you got a question, mate? Paul Whitworth.
Yeah, it was just about that pop-up, but that's all good now.
Okay, cool. Okay, we've got some more votes coming in. All right, well, we'll just give it a couple more minutes. Welcome, Duda. All right, so we got a few votes. So we got 5 votes for C, 1 vote for B, and 2 votes for A. So going back to your presentation, going back to the main presentation, I'm presenting to everyone. Click here to return to the video call. Okay. Okay. All right, I've got a little problem now. Technology's good when it works. Greg, can you still see the presentation, mate?
Yeah, I've still got it.
All right, okay, it sorted itself out now. All right, so those were the 3 questions. And as I said, we had 2 for A, 1 for B, and everybody else picked C. These all sound about the same. These are not something that I made up. These are, A is from the FAA Aeroplane Flying Handbook. That's a FAA document reference number. B is from the New Zealand CAA Flight Instructor Guide. And C is from EASA Guidance Material Annex 1 definition of terms. So what we're sort of looking at here is that there are a number of different takes on what a stall actually is. And it depends where you are on the planet as to what the answer is. In fact, the FAA Aeroplane Flying Handbook, that reference FAA H8083-3C, if you go to another FAA document, AC61-67, it actually has a different meaning for a stall. So it can get pretty confusing as what we're looking at. But we're not all Einstein. That's a caricature of Albert Einstein flying an aeroplane because I couldn't find a picture of the real guy. We're not all Albert Einstein. So what we want to do is we want to look at it from a practical point of view as pilots in real life that's easy to understand. So I had somebody say to me, what do you mean you're having a discussion on stalls? We've got published stall speeds and the bottom of the green arc without flap and bottom of the white arc with flap. What else is there? There are actually 3 contributors to a stall, and we're going to talk about all 3 of them tonight. Angle of attack, speed, and load. So we'll start off with angle of attack. Now, we'll start off with another definition. Angle of attack. This should be pretty generic. It's pretty easy. It's only one thing. It's the angle between the chord line of the wing and the relative wind. That's what the FAA Flying Handbook says. All right. So again, we don't want to get into bogged down with definitions. We want to have it practical. So I had a commercial pilot came to fly with us from another school, and he'd actually undertaken upset recovery training as well. And we were having a discussion because he wanted to do a tail wheel endorsement. So we're having a talk about angle of attack and stalls and things like that. And this is the process I went through with him. I said, okay, so we've got our aeroplane. It's flying along. We're straight and level. And this is our chord line. And this is our relative wind as per the definition of angle of attack from the FAA. And he, yep, we agree. That's our angle of attack. Cool. I said, all right, now we've put the aeroplane into the climb. This is still our chord line. And where's our relative wind coming from? And he said, oh, still straight in front of us. I said, can you show me where it is? And he did this. I said, okay, no worries. What about if we're in a descent? There's our chord line. Where's our relative wind coming from now? And he said, oh, still the same place, still straight from in front of us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just ask anybody who agrees with these 3, raise your hand or with the little button. If you don't agree with what the answer was or what those examples were, don't raise your hand. So if anybody agrees that those 3 examples of angle of attack are correct? Raise your hand. Okay, nobody. That's awesome. That's really good. So it's clearly not correct. So I wanted to dive into his brain a little bit more and try and understand what he's trying to say, except this time I used a different word for the relative wind. And I used the word, where's the relative airflow coming from? So I changed the word wind to airflow. And I stepped it up a bit to make it really dramatic. I said, look, this is an aerobatic aeroplane, and we have the capability of doing aerobatics. So let's say I pull back on the stick and apply full power and pull back on the stick, and I'm going vertically up. That's our chord line. Where's our relative airflow coming from? And again, he said, here. And I went, okay. What about if I'm pitching vertically down? This is my chord line. Where's my relative airflow coming from now? And again, he said, here. So I basically had this. Okay, we've got a clear absence of some understanding here. So I changed the words again. I said, look, if we're flying straight and level, and this is our chord line, this is the airflow relative to our direction of travel. And he agreed, yeah, that's right. And I said, that's our angle of attack. Now, if I'm climbing, which way is the airplane going? Oh, the airplane's going up. Okay, so our chord line is here, and our airflow relative to our direction of travel is from above the horizon because we are going up. And that's our angle of attack. And a little light bulb come on in his head, and I'm just like, oh, you mean it's not from straight ahead? He said every textbook that he read had a picture of the aeroplane like that, and the relative airflow was parallel to the horizon. And when they use the word relative wind, he thinks about the wind that's blowing in the air, and it's always coming from straight ahead of you. So I'm not sure how he passed all his commercial theory exams, but he clearly didn't have an understanding. So I said, if we're descending, that's our chord line, and our airflow relative direction of travel is from below. So he had an epiphany. And so every time we read a definition, this one word here, this word wind, the way we deliver it, we need to make sure that people understand that, because people can take that 2 different ways. So that's just an example of how reading a definition in a book but applying it to real life can be confusing. So we've all seen this picture, I'm sure. If anybody hasn't seen it, this is an example of the airflow over an aerofoil section from our good friends at Bold Method. And then at 16 degrees, we get a bit of turbulence, and at 17 degrees, we get a lot of turbulence. So this is what we call the critical angle. Actually, sorry, I'm going to go back to here. The point at the stall is the critical angle. So this is a chart, and some of you who are instructors will have seen this chart, and others may not have seen this chart. This is a graph of angle of attack versus the coefficient of lift. Now, the coefficient of lift is a bit of a confusing word if you're not really into formulas and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to change that and just put lift. And the values really aren't important. Up the top, we've got lots of lift, and down the bottom, we've got not a lot of lift, if everybody can follow that. Now, ask around the bar room at any pub, and you ask, what's the critical angle? Some people will say 15, some will say 16, some will say 17, some will say 19, some are 18, whatever. We're just going to use 17 as an example. We need to realize that this is not a definitive graph for any particular airplane. It's just for diagrammatical purposes only. But if I ask what is a stall, I sometimes get the answer when the wings are no longer producing lift. Now, I don't know if any instructors have heard people say that, because people read books and they read these examples of definitions. It's when it's not producing lift. So let's have a look at this chart and dissect it a little bit. So let's say we're flying at 15 degrees angle of attack, and we'll come across here and we're producing X lift. All right. Now I'm going to increase the angle of attack to 19 degrees. And if I read this graph right, and all the scholars in the room will say that I'm actually producing X amount of lift. It's the same amount of lift that I produced at 15 degrees angle of attack on the left side of the critical angle line, but at 19 degrees. So if the lift generated by both sides of the critical angle is the same, then why are we stalled? I'll pose that question to you guys and girls now. Write your thoughts in the comments box. Have I still got everybody? Greg, you still there? Hello, Greg.
I'm still here.
All right, everything working okay?
Hey,
Tony's saying, when I teach, I use angle of attack is the difference between where the airplane's pointing and where it's going. Oh my God, we are brothers from another mother. Awesome. We need to transition through the stall to reach the same point. Okay, anybody else? I love that, Tony. I use that. That's really, really good. I don't have it in this briefing, but I've got it in another one. Anybody else got any ideas of why are we, if we've got the same lift on both sides of the critical angle, why are we stalled? Oh, Greg. Okay. Rightio. Let's have a look. I'm going to put the drag curve. So we got the lift curve is in red, lift against angle of attack. Now I'm going to put drag against angle of attack. I just want to highlight this statement down the corner here for graphical reference only, does not represent any specific aircraft. However, I've had some very smart people who helped me out along the way send me a whole bunch of stuff from NASA and flight testing and all that sort of stuff, and it just spins my head around. So I try to take what I've got and make it more readable for us mere mortals. So the drag curve against angle of attack goes like this. Does that answer the question? Oh, good on you, Dieter. How are you, mate? So, past the critical angle, the amount of drag, have a look at that chart now. All it's above 17 degrees, all of that drag is the reason why we're stalled. So, moving on, the next point we're going to ask, I mean, there's a lot more about angle of attack. We're just trying to keep it in a controlled environment here. There's a lot more to learn. But airspeed, let's talk about airspeed. Now, unfortunately, airspeed is the go-to thing of why people stall or why not to stall, more importantly. And it sort of drives me insane a bit, but it's not the go-to reason. It's a combination, and we're going to talk about airspeed here. What complicates it is this is a page out of the model 172S. And this is the stall speeds. It doesn't talk, it only has one section in that whole manual about angle of attack. And what it says is it's difficult for the pilot to see angle of attack. So what they've done is they've created a chart for stall speeds at varying angles of bank with different flap configurations. And for the uneducated or the inexperienced, this again points to, oh, it's all about airspeed, but it's not. And we'll be talking more about angles of bank a little bit later. The problem is that these are published for wings level at 1G. And there's a few more caveats on these numbers as well. Everybody should remember that at level flight in 1G, the public stalling speed is only valid for unaccelerated 1G flight, which means you're not pulling any G, you're not loading the airplane. You're in coordinated flight. You're at one weight, typical of the maximum gross weight, and you're at a particular center of gravity, normally the maximum forward C or G. So there's a lot of things to consider there, a lot of variables, all right? And we're going to talk more about these variables. So in the Part 61 MOS, so Tony, our Civil Aviation Authority, has a manual of standards, and part of that is the pilot training. We are required to do training for stalls under the following conditions, and straight and level flight. Let's talk about that. What we've got here is most people, when they do training, remember that they did stalling wings level at idle at 1G. That's what they did. And we went out a little while ago and we had a bit of fun doing a whole bunch of videos about stalls. And that was a idle 1G stall and stall recovery. Not very exciting. And we'll be talking more about those on the next episode, which will be in the next couple of weeks, because I've got to do a whole bunch of video editing. So how do we perform this? So from straight and level balance flight, we are going to reduce the power to idle and apply a little bit of rudder to maintain balance, left rudder. And that's a whole nother story. If you're not sure why you need left rudder, give me a call and I can give you about 5 seconds on that. As the aircraft starts to descend, if you want to maintain altitude, you need to increase the angle of attack. That's your basic slow flight rule. I'm going to reduce power, increase the angle of attack by applying back pressure on the yoke of the stick, but we're going to sacrifice airspeed. As we continue to reduce the airspeed, we're going to descend. If we want to maintain altitude, we need to continue to increase the angle of attack until the yoke reaches the fully aft position, and that's called the stall stick position. If nobody's heard of that, make yourself familiar with it. We're going to be talking about it a couple of times during this presentation. At the stall stick position, the aircraft will reach the published stall speed if we're at wings level at 1G. Simple as that. Now, most pilots, as I said, will recall this exercise and that they do it slowly and deliberately at idle and 1G. So if we're flying straight and level, we're just going to break down this slow and deliberate at 1G. We're flying straight and level. Our thrust will equal our drag and our lift will equal our weight. That's what straight and level is. Straight and level unaccelerated flight. So we have power at 23 plus our cruise attitude, which will equal our performance, which will give us our cruise speed, and level flight subject to thermal activity. Okay? And if anybody's got a question at all, just raise your hand or click your microphone on and say so. When we're going to go do the idle stall, we'll go through that process. So we're flying along and we've done our hassle checks or our pre-aerobatic checks or maneuvering checks. And we're going to reduce the thrust to idle and our drag will start to increase. And if we want lift to remain the same as weight so that we maintain our altitude, we need to ease back on the stick, increase the angle of attack, and create more lift. What that means is if we got our power at idle, we need to have an increasing nose attitude, which will give us a decreasing airspeed to maintain level flight. All right? So looking at that with a relationship from our three wing sections here with the different angles of attack, we've got our aeroplane flying straight and level, and this is our airflow relative to the direction of travel, and it's horizontal to the horizon because we want to fly level. That's the name of the exercise. We reduce power to idle, and we will start to descend if we don't do anything. The nose will pitch down. But if we want to maintain our altitude, we need to increase the angle of attack. And as we slow down more, we need to increase the angle of attack more. And as we continue to slow down, we need to increase the angle of attack. The stick comes back to the stall stick position and we are stalled. Slowly and deliberately at idle and 1G. No load. Now, that's a statement that a lot of people who are not interested in aerobatics or have that kind of interest, they're not really sure what that means. So let's have a talk about what we mean by no load. So we've talked about angle of attack. We've just talked about airspeed, slow and deliberate at 1G, how we can control that. No load means, we've all seen this young fella, I'm sure, and this is where he's flying in the extra and he's starting to pull G greater than 1G, just pulling back on the stick. And as he gets towards the critical angle, he's just going for a little nighty-night nap there and having a whole bunch of fun, as you can see. So what is this load thing? So the action of increasing the angle of attack by increasing the back pressure on the yoke and increasing the G force is referred to as loading the aircraft. The action of decreasing the angle of attack by releasing the back pressure on the yoke and decreasing G is referred to as unloading the aircraft. Now, it's important to remember here there is a difference between pushing the stick forward and releasing the back pressure. All right, and we'll be talking a bit more about that in our video dissection in a couple of weeks. But for now, let's have a look at the effects of load factor relative to the stall. Now, again, this diagram is something that I found very, very useful, but I didn't learn about it until after I'd become a flight instructor, and nobody really talked to me about it. I think a lot of people in their initial training, this might be too much for them to get their head around, but I think everybody in the room here has probably got enough experience to understand what we're talking about. So what we're going to be talking about is what's called a VG diagram, and this is the indicated airspeed, the velocity. I'm having a problem with my mouse. Just had a bit of a runaway here. We've got giving away all my trade secrets here. Sorry about this, guys and girls. So we've got indicated airspeed and load factor and level flight at 1G. Now, if you've heard the statement, keep it in the envelope, we're going to talk about the envelope. So fly within the envelope. And this envelope, the VG diagram, is how the colors on the airspeed indicator are derived. So follow me through the bouncing ball and we'll have a look at this thing here. So this is a fictitious aeroplane, by the way. This point here is the bottom of this line. This line here, I've got my little red spotter. I hope you can see it. This line here is the stall line, and this line at 1G is 50 knots. And that is our stall speed for this aeroplane, where the stall line intersects the 1G line. And on the airspeed indicator, it's the bottom of the green. I'm not going to worry about flaps for this example. We're just talking about the bottom of the green. Here's the yellow arc, and this point here is where V and O. And that's that point there. These yellow points and red, orange points and red points, this is the V and E. We'll talk about the orange points in a sec. V and E, this is that point there, 160 knots or 158 knots or whatever it is. This point here, if we translate that back, is the maximum positive G. Dita sent me a message. I can't read that, Dieter. Sorry, mate. So that's the maximum positive G. And this point down here is the maximum negative G for the aeroplane. Now, important thing to note about maximum positive G is that that is the point at which you should maneuver below. You should never exceed that, because the manufacturer of the aeroplane needs to ensure that there is a 1.5 tolerance from the maximum negative G before there is a structural failure. So above this green line of the maximum G line, you will get structural damage to the aeroplane. And if you go 1.5 times the maximum G, you will get a failure. However, it's important to note that if you spend a bit of time in the structural damage area, you're probably going to get a structural failure without leaving the green zone. So that's important to note. Now, the green area is the normal operating range. The yellow area is the caution range. And this is what they refer to as the envelope. So let's have a look how we can use this graph and read this graph. If I'm flying the airplane at 90 knots and I am flying at 1G, I'm going to be at this location on the VG diagram. That's right there. There's probably normal cruise for your generic Decathlon or Citabria. If I fly at 110 knots and I pull 3G, then I'm going to be at this spot here. Now, that's still within the normal parameters of this aeroplane, so that's safe. All right? If I'm flying at 75 knots and I'm flying at 1G, just cruising along straight and level, I'm going to be there. However, if I'm flying at 75 knots and I pull 3G, I'm going to be outside. And as a matter of fact, the aeroplane will actually stall on this line coming up from the 75 knots. It'll stall right here at about 2.3 G. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So let's think about when we're on an approach. We're slow, we're configured for a landing. What's our approach speed? Well, our approach speed for the instructors in the room and the others, as a general rule of thumb, is 1.3 times the stall speed. And with all the wind we've been having lately, you might want to put a little bit on for the wind. But for our example here, we've got a calm day. Hello, Greg sent me a message. Everybody just turn your mic on and say hello. Make sure I'm not talking to myself.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
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 We can hear you.
Hello. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Claire.
yeah.
Oh, you guys can see me. Oh, I did not know that. Like I said, it's the first time. All right. So our approach speed for this aeroplane, if our stall speed's 50, then our approach speed is going to be 1.3 times that. And that's going to be at 65 knots. And that's a valid speed to come in at, not too much energy, and a good buffer from away from the stall, which is at 50 knots. So you can see the red circle there is the stall point at 1G, and we're approaching at 65 knots at 1G. No load. We're not pulling on the stick and creating G. Now, a lot of people talk about the stall spin, the base to final, the downwind, the base turn, all that sort of thing. How many people have had an instructor, or if you're an instructor, how many instructors have said to their student, don't bank steep close to the ground? Lots of people?
Yes.
Hands? Yes.
Yes.
All right. Did your instructor ever tell you why? Yes, no? Or did you just go, oh, my instructor said don't do that, so I'm not going to do it?
Yeah, I guess when I was being shown how to do this, I was told don't bank steeply, but principally because if you, for example, overshot the centre line of the runway, you wouldn't be tempted to yank back on the stick to try to get back on the centre line, which then loads up the aircraft.
Right.
And if you're not balanced, you're in all sorts of trouble then.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay, so for those of you who have had an instructor tell you, who hasn't told you, did you ever ask? So don't be afraid to challenge your instructor and find out more if you've got that thirst for knowledge. So let's have a talk about the angular bank and the load factor. So this graph here, again from Bold Method, when we bank the aircraft, if we want to have level flight, now this graph only is applicable if you are trying to maintain level flight, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So for a load factor, for each change in the load factor, there will be a stall speed increase. All right, and we're going to look at that now. So let's say we're flying along and we are on the base to final turn, for example, and we apply aileron and rudder imbalance and we get 30 degrees angular bank. Now our load factor is going to increase by 1.15 G and our stall speed will increase by 1.07 if we are trying to maintain level. If we're trying to do a level turn. Okay, if you don't pull back on the stick, the nose will pitch down and you will descend. If you don't raise the nose to try and keep the aircraft from descending, you won't get an increase in load factor and the consequent increase in stall speed. But what that means is if you do load the aircraft, like what Stan was saying, so our stall speed is the indicated airspeed times 1.07, which means that the stall speed is going to climb up this leading edge stall curve, which means that our stall speed is now 54 knots because we're loading the aircraft. Plus, we have a load factor of 1.15 G, which puts us here. Everybody following so far? Now, let's use Stan's example of we're overshooting the center line. So we go, oh, getting a bit past the center line here. I'm going to steepen the turn up and we go to 45 degrees and we're getting low. So we're going to pull back on that stick to try and not descend and keep the aeroplane in a level turn. So our load factor is going to go up 1.41 and our stall speed by 1.19. Again, please understand that's if you're trying to load the aircraft or pull the stick back to keep the aeroplane from descending. All right. So the parameters will be stall speed will go by a factor of 1.19, which comes up here, which is now 59 knots. Now, all the time we're being very diligent pilots and we're maintaining our decided approach speed, which is 65 knots. All right. Then we've got the load factor in because we're pulling the stick back and we're starting to load the aeroplane. And that's going to put us here on that chart, 65 knots with a load factor of 1.41. You see how our safety tolerance is starting to decay. All right. And we've really shot past, so we really bank the aircraft over and we're getting low, so we pull back on the stick. 60 degrees angular bank is a really good number because it's exactly 2G. We have to increase the lift twice. The aeroplane weighs twice as much and our stall speed is going to increase by 1.41. Again, if we're trying to do a level turn. Okay. Where is this going to put us on our chart? Well, our stall speed is going to be 1.41. That's where it is here. And if we're diligent in flying the numbers for our approach at 65 knots and we pull the aeroplane for 2 Gs at 60 degrees angular bank, we've got a 2 times load factor and it puts us there and we are outside the envelope. If we are out of balance and we stall, that's an accelerated stall in a turn, you will spin. And at base to final turn, you will not survive. All right. So what are we talking about here? We've got a whole bunch of information coming at you. We talked about angle of attack. We talked about airspeed. We talked about aircraft load. It's got to be an easier way to remember this stuff. And so if you've got information overload, we're going to look at this stuff now. So is anybody, for hands up if you're familiar with the fire triangle? Anybody heard of that? Yep, few hands going up. Military people, yeah, all good, excellent. People in the fire departments and all that stuff, excellent. All right, if we have oxygen, heat, and fuel in the right quantities with a source of ignition, you will get a fire. So I'm going to introduce you all to the stall triangle. Now, what the stall triangle is we have speed, load, and angle of attack. If we keep the aeroplane inside the envelope, like what we're talking about with the VG diagram, the aeroplane will fly just fine. However, if we increase the exceed the angle attack, exceed the critical angle of attack, the aeroplane will stall. If we allow the speed of the aeroplane to get below VS, we will stall. And if we exceed the load factor of the front of that line, that lift line on, the stall line on the VG diagram, we're going to get an increase in stall speed and we will stall. But they're all tied together. If we increase the angle of attack, we're going to get a decrease in speed. If we pull the stick or yoke back too fast, we're going to get a load. So all of these three components are all tied together. And you do something with one, you're going to get an effect on the other. So what that means is, if I increase the angle of attack at 1G, so you can see here on the right-hand side of the load, we're maintaining 1G. And I keep pulling that back, I'm eventually going to reach my my stall speed, and I'll stall. Likewise, if I load the aeroplane up with G, I'm going to go further up onto the stall line on the VG diagram, and I'm going to get an increased stall speed, and I'm going to stall. Now, let's look at that slow and deliberate at 1G only. So I don't know why I did that. Here we are. Bit weird. Okay, so our speed here is just over 100 knots, and we've got about a 4-degree angle of attack, which is about ideal for straight and level, and we're at 1G. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring the power to idle, and we're going to increase the angle of attack. And we're going to get a resultant change in the speed, looking at the vertical bars on the right-hand corner. As we slow down more, I keep easing the stick back towards the stall stick position, and my angle of attack is increasing, and I'm sacrificing airspeed to do so, and my load is still 1. When I reach the critical angle, my speed gets to the stall speed, and we stall the aeroplane. But that's only valid at 1G, wings level. So let's look at what happens if we load the aeroplane up in this example. So again, we've got about 100 knots on the airspeed indicator. We've got 4 degrees angle of attack, and we're at 1G. Except this time, we're just going to reef back on the controls and load the aeroplane up, or we're going to roll the aircraft and pull in the turn. So as we increase the angle of attack, our G loading is going up. 4 is our maximum G. We're still doing well above stall speed. When we reach the critical angle, it'll be at our design load limit, and the airplane will stall, and our speed is well above the stall speed. So what that basically means is, if you overshoot the center line, don't pull the aeroplane. If you're low and you find yourself in this position, Unload the aeroplane, release the back pressure, roll the wings level in balance, apply full power, climb and go around. Simple as that. Just don't pull the controls back. Otherwise you can get yourself in trouble. All right. So let's run another poll here. And I'm going to ask you a question. It'll pop up in a second. I should have ended that poll. And I'll launch another one. So everybody should get a pop-up now. And I want you to answer from the poll, during flight training, in what aircraft conditions are we required to stall the aircraft? So everybody should have a poll. If you go to your right-hand corner, if the pop-up's not there, bottom right corner of the triangle, square, circle, and just click on that. I got one vote already. I'm not sure how many people we got on board here, but oh, I got 14 people on board. So I've got 4 votes. Cass's clock is ticking. Tick, 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 tick. Just a couple more minutes. So we've got half the people have responded. Any more for the poll? No worries, Stan. All good, mate. All right. So there's only half the people have answered the poll. So the results of the poll were all of the above were 4 votes and straight and level were 3 votes. Okay. So here was the questions. What is the required training for RPL, PPL, and CPL? They are all required. Now, I went flying with a gentleman the other day. He's tuning in. How you going, Phil? And we did stalls in a turn. And he said to me, of all the years he's been flying, that's the first time anybody's done a stall in a turn with him. Yet it is part of the manual standards required training, which is pretty scary, really. So the fact that the poll says, oh, really? Tony, that must be different from Australia, because that's straight out of the manual standards. So descending flight, stalls, and climbing flight, not in multi-engine aeroplanes. Interesting. So the fact that I've got 3 for straight and level and 4 for all of the above adds a bit of weight to the fact that most people only remember straight and level flight. However, we got a problem. Most people remember this condition during training. We just proved that, right? However, loss of control happens with these ones, not the straight and level. So we need to be aware of what the training, the way we're training people. I know we've got a couple of flight instructors on board. Just make sure you are yourself up to speed with the requirements of the stall training, and help people, because this is the area. These red ones are where you're going to get in trouble. Loss of control does not give you time for a hassle check. We can't do loss of control slow and deliberate at 1G. It just doesn't happen. It's when you least expect it. I was flying with a young fellow the other day, doing his tail wheel endorsement, and he let his hand off the throttle. We're in the decathlon, and let his hand off the throttle briefly at about 300 feet. And I went, gotcha. And I pulled the power back, and he had a little bit of startle, but his initial reaction was appropriate, where he unloaded the aeroplane, lowered the nose. And I said, good response, well done. Let's climb away. And as we were climbing away, he said, oh, the instructor normally announces that this is going to be a simulated. And I said to him, well, mate, when you have your first real engine failure, you just let the engine know how much notice you would like that it's going to fail, because it's not going to tell you. So we need to be aware of the fact that the conditions that we train, the way we train people is we're lulling them into a false sense of security that, oh, if I have a problem, my instructor's going to tell me. Not all the time. Yeah, Stan, your comment there. That's if you're going to come up, mate, you were talking about coming up. Let's go and spend some time together, mate, and we'll fix all of this. It doesn't have to be scary. The thing about this upset recovery is we've actually got training for in aircraft that are approved for spinning, and we also do upset recovery in our Technams, in our Cessna, in our Bushcat. We do it in aeroplanes that are not certified for spinning. We do not spin the aeroplanes. We show pilots what could happen in the particular airplane types that they have. So your aircraft and the environment will give you many warnings of an impending loss of control. And this is where we're losing people, is because we're not training them to be more aware of what's happening. So loss of control prevention training, or UPRT, is something that is new, and some people are scared of it. That sounds a bit terrifying, but it doesn't have to be. So why do we need to know about it? It's about prevention. It's about an awareness of the potential threats and the conditions, and being situationally aware. It's about putting into plans effective avoidance, so that when you see something about to happen, you take steps to avoid the event. And then if you do get caught by unawares, as a matter of fact, somebody on the Survey Monkey, one of the questions was, have you ever had an unexpected stall event? Somebody said yes, they had one during a climb, and I think it was straight and level. But the recovery is your last line of defense, effective in time of recovery to restore the aircraft to a safe condition. So it's not aerobatics. We don't go out and do aerobatics. Aerobatics is about purposely taking the airplane to the edge of the envelope and beyond. Loss of control prevention training is about identifying and having tools in your toolbox so that you can prevent an unintentional upset. We don't intend to go out and stall and spin the aeroplane, but sometimes the conditions will put us there. So the training process for that is academic training and practical training. We don't have a flight simulator training device, so it's all on aeroplane, and it can be, we have training courses that have it split in between the decathlon and non-utility category airplanes, so that you can understand the differences and how to handle those airplanes. But there's about 80% in the classroom and 20% on the aeroplane. So there's a lot of classroom. It's not about going out and turning yourself upside down. It's about talking about all of these items and then going out with new knowledge and new information to create new skills that will make you a safer pilot. So stalls, it's not all about airspeed. And unlike everything out there, there's a lot of stuff on social media that is misinformation. There's there are people out there trying to do the right thing, much like myself. I'm not perfect. I'm giving you the best information that I've got available, and hopefully you're learning some stuff. But there are places that are from a reputable source, and unfortunately, it's from our regulators. The ATSB, our transport safety investigators, Tony, for those who don't know, Tony's in the UK tuning in. The ATSB publish some information to address accidents that they've investigated. However, we're talking about maintaining glide speed in this avoidable accidents number 3, and they're talking about partial power loss. But the problem here in this one is, what is most important is that the primary focus be on maintaining airspeed to prevent stalling. Well, we've just talked about stalling is a factor of airspeed, load, and angle of attack. There's only 1/3 of the message being here, and it's supporting that airspeed is the reason for stalling, and that's not true. Unfortunately, CASA has a new spin avoidance poster, and it talks about turns in slow flight. In the traffic pattern, it's during precautionary search and inspection, it's easy to be distracted and the airspeed to drop. Why does the airspeed drop? Because we're loading the aircraft or we've got too much angle of bank. We just went through the VG diagram and everybody understands why the airspeed drops, but to the uninitiated and the uneducated, they would just read that and say airspeed's the reason why. And then again here, climbing turns, trim changes during flat retraction turns, distract from speed control. Again, airspeed. It's not just that. It's flat position and power setting and a whole bunch of stuff. So just be aware there's a lot more to it. I thank you all for tuning in tonight. We got it done in an hour. I'm really, really chuffed with that. Thanks to Greg for helping me get this together today. And thanks to my wife who helps out with everything as normal. Within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be running another one of these free sessions. We went out and had a whole bunch of fun videoing the 5 major inappropriate stall recoveries. So we went out in the decathlon. These are the 5 types of stall recoveries that I've seen during my time teaching upset recovery and loss of control training and during my instructing time. A little bit of fun, but with a message. I'm soon going to be doing online courses. 3 things every pilot needs to know. A series of 3 online sessions. And if you come and fly with us, you get a bit of a discount. And another one that's a bit of fun, how to fly almost any aeroplane like a pro in 10 minutes. But you have to have done the 3 online sessions with that thing first. If you're around the airfield or you're coming out, personalised pilot coaching, develop your skills, one-on-one training, tweak and give you a polish up. Loss of control prevention training for both RA and GA. There are differences. You cannot go and do an upset recovery training course in an extra 300 and expect to get the same result in your Foxbat. It just will not work. It has to be aircraft specific. And then we do the full UPR training, spinning aerobatics tailwheel training at your location or ours. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll stay online for just another 5 or 10 minutes, but please keep an eye out, follow the Bad Attitude Strike Aviation training and Bad Attitude Advanced Flight training on Facebook and Instagram when I get a chance to put stuff on Instagram. I'll post up about when the video thing is for the 5 inappropriate stall recoveries. If I could just ask everybody to please go on to whatever site you found the link for this and give feedback, good, bad, or ugly. I don't really care. I just appreciate the fact that you all took time to come and listen to me jabber on for an hour. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll answer. And if not, I'll see you around.
Thanks, Paul. Much appreciated, mate. I'll certainly see if I can get the word around to some of our students and even instructors and see if we can sort of get a group organised so that maybe we can invite you to come down this way.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Happy to do so.
And I
Thanks very
look
much,
forward-
Paul.
Look forward
Thanks,
to
John.
you.
See you, Stan.
Thanks, mate.
Anybody else got any questions?
Tons. I'll ask you tomorrow.
Hey,
I'll look
Paul.
forward to it.
Thanks, Paul.
See you, mate.
Paul,
Yes, Div.
thank you. This was lovely.
No worries, Div.
Absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you so much. It was so much knowledge in hand.
No worries. Thanks, mate. I'll get back to you with a time for Sunday.
Now, or you know what to plan for me now. All those stalls.
Sounds good, mate.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, great job, Paul.
Thanks, Phil.
Cheers, mate.
See you, mate. Dita's waving his hand. Hello,
Still
Dita.
waiting for my panel to go in, mate, too.
Oh, really? Bugger.
Patiently,
You're a very patient man.
mate. Driving me nuts. Anyway, it's getting
We'll,
close.
we'll chat soon, mate.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Paul.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, buddy.
Tony, thanks for getting up early or getting your coffee or whatever. You got anything to add? That was interesting what you said about the twins.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's so long ago I did my training. I learned to fly when I was a teenager, and I'm in nearly 60 now. So, but we do it for fun. And when I do my renewals, my instructors know there's no point in just doing. They know I fly a lot, so we always do something a bit extra. So I did a twin renewal in the Beech 18 a month ago, and we did stalling in turns, landing configuration, climbing with single engine and both engines, just for a laugh.
Right. Yeah, it's good. Go out and experiment with a safety pilot and lots of altitude. And
Yeah. So I taught my son to fly. It's quite a funny story. So I always teach my students, we cover most of the panel up for the first few lessons, and they just fly angle of attack, attitude, power setting.
Yeah, that's good.
On the very first flight, we do stalls, just to show them that. My basic philosophy, I tell them, is if the aeroplane is not doing what you want, and you're up high, you're not about to hit anything. Don't panic, but if it's not doing what you want, it's probably because the stick's too far away from the center. Just really basically for them. So if it's not doing what you want, pause, move the stick towards 0G or center, have a think, and then do something.
Yeah, that's good.
Obviously near the ground's a bit different. But anyway, when we get into by the time we get into the circuit, we've done stalling in turns, all sorts of attitudes. But without the ASI, we add the ASI once we're in the circuit, and it's telling them what they already know. Anyway, he went solo, and I had to deliver an aeroplane. So for some cross-country time, he was going to come and pick me up. And I got a phone call, and we fly from quite a small airfield. So once you get to about 40 knots, you're committed to taking off or going through the hedge if you abandon.
Wow.
Because the runway's only about 700 meters.
Right.
Anyway, he called me up and he said, "Oh, I took off in the Slingsby and the ASI didn't go above 50, but I got airborne, flew around, came back, landed. Do you still want me to come and get you?" So he wasn't phased by not having an ASI at all.
Well, funny you should say that, because I was doing a formation flight with a pilot who did his training elsewhere. We briefed the flight and all that stuff, and he was in the lead. We were in a Vic, and I was in the number 2 slot, and we just took off, and we were climbing out, and at about 150 feet, the guy in the lead punched the button, hit the button, and said, "My airspeed indicator is not working. I'm knocking it off," and turned right in front of me and broke away. And I went, "What?" And when we got back on the ground, I said, "Mate, who gives a shit that your airspeed indicator is not
Yeah.
working? Fly the power and attitude. And the best story that I've got, and this is what for me as an instructor is what it's all about. I did a tail wheel endorsement for a gentleman who was in the Royal Navy, actually, Tony, and he flew Harrier jump jets in the Falklands. And doing a tail wheel endorsement. And after the first lesson, he had no airspeed indicator. We just did power and attitude. And I get them to listen to the machine. And about a year after we finished flying together, he sent me an email. It was just one line. And it just said, just thought I'd let you know I went night flying the other night and had on the third circuit, I had a total electrical failure and the aeroplane went completely black. And I couldn't see anything. The only thing I had was the lights of the horizon. I heard you nattering in my head. I lowered the nose to what I thought was the level attitude, pulled the power back to what I thought sounded like cruise power, did an uneventful circuit and landing. And I just want to let you know you probably saved the day. And for me, that's just like, mate, my job is done. You know, awesome stuff.
But I think all this UPRT is needed because people aren't taught properly anymore.
Correct.
Or in the old days, I guess in the 40s, or most of the training was in, but they went flying. If they weren't up to it, they got kicked off. Their instructor, you know, if they didn't meet the grade. Whereas now it's the expectation that if you turn up a checkbook, you get a license. And I think some of the instructors are a long way below the required ability, certainly in the UK.
Well, it's the same here, mate. And Dev, you put your hand up. You got.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm just here enjoying the conversation, and this means a lot to me because I remember Paul is the only instructor that I'm very new to aviation. Okay, I've only got basic hours, but of all the instructors that I've trained with, I know that Paul is the only one who drums into my head all the time. Fly the attitude, fly the attitude, fly the attitude.
Yeah.
And I think as someone who's very new to the industry as a pilot, but I have been in the industry for a long time as a layman, I think that is the most sensible advice you can give anyone.
And then the first aeroplanes didn't have instruments.
That's right.
Mind you, they crashed a lot, but
Yeah.
I had a gliding instructor came to do some power flying, and we did spinning in the Tiger Moth. And it told me what the spin recovery was perfectly. When we went up and did it, he shut the throttle, opposite rudder, but kept the stick back. So the Tiger's quite good at it, just starts spinning the other way. So I took over and we said, you know, explain it again. Perfect. Same result, went wrong. So he landed and he said, yeah, I did it all, but I didn't do the last bit because the nose was already pointing at the ground.
There you go. That's it. Guys, I'm going to have to go. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We'll chat again soon.
Yeah, great. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
See ya.